How recording memory changed civilization. For most of human history, memory lived only inside fragile minds, fading with time, emotion, and death, taking entire worlds of experience with it. Every person who died carried away not just their own story, but the accumulated observations, skills, and insights that filled their lifetime, leaving behind only what others had managed to absorb through direct contact. To understand why recording memory changed everything, we must return to a time when knowledge survived only as long as someone could remember it and pass it on accurately. Early humans relied on stories, repetition, and ritual to preserve what mattered, knowing that forgetting could mean danger, loss, or extinction. The stakes were not abstract. A forgotten technique for identifying poisonous plants, a lost understanding of seasonal animal behavior, a misremembered route to water. Any of these lapses could have direct and severe consequences for an entire community. Experience accumulated slowly. Skills were relearned. Mistakes repeated. Progress reset with every generation, because memory could not outlast the people who carried it. Each generation began not from a peak of the previous one's understanding, but from whatever partial, imperfect version of that understanding had survived the transfer. The loss was invisible, because no one could measure what had been forgotten. But humans began searching for ways to make memory permanent. Marks scratched into surfaces, symbols arranged with intention, objects used to store meaning beyond the mind. These early attempts were crude, limited, and often ambiguous, but they represented a fundamentally new approach to the problem of knowledge loss, one that shifted the burden of preservation from biological memory to the physical world. This was more than communication. It was preservation. A recorded memory did not forget. It did not change with emotion. It waited. It allowed knowledge to move forward intact, instead of starting over. The reliability of a mark, its stubborn persistence through time and weather and human forgetfulness, gave it a power that no spoken word could match. For the first time, humans could build on the past instead of repeating it. This single capability, the ability to accumulate knowledge across generations without degradation, was perhaps the most significant development in the entire history of human civilization, because it transformed progress from a fragile, easily reversed process into a durable, compounding one. Memory stopped being personal. It became collective. And in that shift, civilization found a way to remember itself. As memory moved outside the mind, it began reshaping how humans learned, planned, and governed, because once information could be stored, it could be accumulated without limit. Recorded memory allowed knowledge to stack. One discovery no longer erased another. Skills improved across generations. Ideas evolved instead of restarting. The cumulative nature of recorded knowledge meant that each generation could begin where the previous one had ended, building upward rather than rebuilding from the foundation. This compounding effect accelerated every domain of human activity, from tool-making to agriculture to the organization of social life. This accumulation changed education. Learning shifted from imitation to study. People could access experiences they had never lived. Understanding expanded beyond individual lifespan. A person born into a community with extensive records had access to the concentrated wisdom of dozens or hundreds of lifetimes. Memory records also stabilized society. Laws were written, agreements preserved, history ordered. Continuity replaced reliance on fragile recollection. The ability to reference a fixed, unchanging record when disputes arose gave communities a stability that purely oral traditions could never provide. But this permanence introduced rigidity. Recorded ideas resisted change. Mistakes endured alongside wisdom. Outdated beliefs remained influential simply because they were preserved. The same durability that made recorded memory so valuable also made it resistant to correction, because a written claim carried an authority that a spoken one did not, regardless of whether the claim was still accurate. Power concentrated around memory control. Those who decided what was recorded shaped reality. Archives became authority. Forgetting became political. The ability to determine which events and voices entered the permanent record was a form of power that influenced every future generation. Yet recorded memory also empowered questioning. Past decisions could be examined, patterns revealed, progress accelerated through reflection. The same records that could be used to consolidate power could also be used to challenge it. because they provided evidence that existed independently of the claims of any living authority. Human identity shifted. Individuals became part of a long narrative. Lives felt connected to something larger than the present moment. The awareness that one's actions might be recorded, remembered, and judged by future generations changed how people thought about their choices and their responsibilities. Memory was no longer just survival. It became legacy. And that legacy was already reshaping the future. As recorded memory expanded, it began reshaping power, culture, and identity, because once the past could be preserved, it could also be used, interpreted, and controlled. History stopped being a collection of stories and became a sequence of records. Events gained dates. Causes were debated. Responsibility could be traced. Memory began shaping judgment. The ability to look back at a documented sequence of events and draw conclusions about cause and effect gave humans a tool for understanding that was fundamentally different from anything oral tradition could provide, because it allowed comparison across time with precision that memory alone could never achieve. This changed authority. Leaders could justify actions by referencing the past. Traditions gained weight because they were written. Change slowed when records resisted reinterpretation. The written past became a kind of anchor, stabilizing institutions and practices even when circumstances had shifted enough to make those practices less effective or less appropriate. But recorded memory also challenged power. Inconsistencies became visible. Promises could be compared to outcomes. Lies could be exposed across time. A leader who made a public commitment that was recorded and preserved could be held accountable years or decades later, creating a form of oversight that had no equivalent in purely oral societies. Culture deepened. Art, philosophy, and science built upon preserved thought. Ideas traveled farther than their creators ever could. Civilization spoke to the future through archives, the accumulated intellectual output of society, preserved in written form, became a resource that transcended geography and time. Yet this permanence carried tension. Too much memory made adaptation harder. Societies clung to outdated frameworks because they were recorded, not because they still worked. The weight of the past pressed down on the present, making it difficult to change direction even when the evidence for change was clear, because the authority of the record resisted the authority of current experience. Individuals felt the weight of history. Identity became inherited as much as chosen. The past shaped expectations before experience could. A person born into a recorded tradition inherited not just knowledge, but obligations and constraints established long before they existed. Recorded memory became both foundation and burden. It allowed humanity to grow beyond a single lifetime, but it also made forgetting nearly impossible. And that conflict was approaching its peak. The climax of recording memory was not preservation, but consequence. Because once humanity could remember everything, it lost the ability to forget easily. Every success remained visible. Every failure stayed recorded. The past stopped fading and began shaping the present with constant pressure. The weight of accumulated memory created a world in which history was not just background, but an active force, influencing decisions, constraining options, and shaping expectations in ways that were often invisible to the people living under its influence. Recorded memory gave civilization continuity, but also froze mistakes in place. Ideas outlived their usefulness. Conflicts carried forward. Old decisions influenced new lives long after their context disappeared. The inability to forget meant that grievances, errors, and outdated assumptions persisted alongside genuine wisdom, and separating one from the other became an ongoing challenge that every generation had to face. Yet, without recorded memory, humanity would still be starting over. Science would stall. Culture would fracture. Progress would reset endlessly. Memory made civilization possible, even when it made it heavy. The trade-off was not optional. The benefits of recorded memory were so fundamental that abandoning them was never a realistic possibility, regardless of the burdens they carried. The challenge now is balance. What to preserve, what to reinterpret, what to let go. Memory must guide, not imprison. The ability to curate the past, to decide what remains relevant and what should recede, is perhaps the most important skill a civilization can develop. Today, humanity records more than ever before. Every action leaves a trace. Every idea can persist indefinitely. The question is no longer how to remember. It is how to live with what we remember, because memory is no longer just a record of who we were. It is a force shaping who we become. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. How